Hi, I'm Mark and this is Foothill Paint and Fabrication. Today we're back on the bed for that 1950 Chevy truck. We've got some DAing to do to feather edge in some lines. We've got some body filler to do or glazing to do on some of the areas that we hammered out and ground. And then we've got overall sanding to get done and hopefully get this thing ready for prime. So let's just jump right into it and see how much we can get done today. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is grab the DA and we're going to feather edge in a lot of these lines. This is where that bed rail was spot welded on, and obviously there was no paint underneath it. So we've got quite a ledge here of paint. And then we have some of the dents that we took out and some of the spot welds and other holes we filled. And then on this side, we've got quite a ledge over here from the truck being painted 3 or 4 times without removing the fenders. There's a huge ledge right here of paint. So we're going to feather edge that out before we go into prime so we can make sure that's nice and smooth transition. And of course some of the other repairs we did need to be filled. But first we're going to start with the DA and get going on that. Okay, to get rid of this ridge here, I'll be using the DA with some 80 grit on it. And we're going to feather edge about 1 inch, 1.5 inches up all the way around the whole perimeter here. You can tell a few spots where it looked like the fender was actually kind of glued on. So I want to make sure I feather that, edge that off. When we put primer on there, we'll be able to make it a nice smooth transition and it'll look great once the fenders are bolted back up. So let me grab a dust mask, air hose, and get this busted out as fast as possible. Okay, even with the fan on, I got blue all over me, and it's all over the shop. If you notice, when I was DAing, I was working the higher area first. I was dropping down to the ridge we were trying to get rid of, but what I was trying to do is go up higher and start preparing these layers to be feathered down to that lip. So I work up here and try to knock those down a little bit, so when I come down and try to get rid of that ridge, then I've got a nice smooth transition. So I'm running my hand over this. I can feel the layers of paint, but I can't feel, waviness. So we've got at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 layers of paint right here we just feather edged. So once we get some primer on here, I'll make probably a double pass so we can make sure it's nice and smooth. It should come out really nice. Now you notice I stopped there for a moment. I missed a dent. It happens. I was DAing. We got a shiner that showed up here. Realized I had a little crease on the other side, hammered it out, DA'd it. I'm going to have to probably put some filler on there, maybe hit it with a grinder, smooth that out, but we're good to go. This looks great. I'm going to move on to the inside and do that other one, and then we're going to mix up some glazing putty and hit all these areas that we welded in the holes, fixed spot welds, and knocked out dents. Okay, we're done DAing everything. We got everything sanded, feather edged off. I did a little more hammering on a few spots. Hit a lot of areas with the DA, then went through and found all the spot welds on the inside and all the areas that we ground, welded in, everything, and got them prepped. Then I blew everything off, went over everything with my crappy old tack rag here. It's about done. It's losing its stickiness to make sure all the dust was off. Now we're going to mix up some catalyzed glazing putty, and we'll go around and hit all those spots we welded in and all those little low spots, just the tiny ones. And then we'll go around and find all the chips and nicks and everything else. So let me mix them up here real quick and then we'll get after it. Okay, I'll just show you a few spots. We're going to do these. These are the ones the dents we hammered out from both sides. Hit it with a grinder real quick, the sanding disc. I mixed this glazing up pretty light on the hardener to give me a little more time. And what I'll do is I'll just park this out into the sun You can still see the repair there, so I'm going to go over it again real light, make sure I don't have anything. I'm going to have to go back and do it twice. Got one there. Another one right here. And I'm just going to go around and do all these spots. Now I roughed up these areas really good. This material is designed to go over paint. But I always want to make sure I rough it up really good to give it max adhesion. All right, I'm going to run around and get all these done, and I'll bring you back. Okay, I got all the ones I could find, or could see. You can tell there's a lot of nicks and scratches and chips in the side of this, inside of this bed. Most of that's going to be taken off with a DA. We're going to roll it out in the sun, let this thing bake a little bit, set those off really good and hard, and then we'll hit it with a DA. Okay, we got the bed back in the shop. It was baking out in the sun while I ate lunch. Everything is hard as a rock. It was actually, as soon as I rolled it out there, it was ready to sand, but I like to let it bake a little bit. So I'm going to hit them all these spots, since they're all perfectly flat, I'm going to hit them all with the DA with some 80 grit on there, and smooth them all out, and then see if we have anything else to fill. So let me get a dust mask on and some hearing protection, and we'll get these knocked out real quick. Okay, that took 22 minutes in real time. The DA with 80 grit on it makes short work of this Catalyzed Glazing putty. It sands super well. It's really hard. It doesn't clog paper. I love this stuff. I was able to hold the DA flat and knock all those spots down, and they all feel great. I got 3 little spots that need a little bit more fill. I didn't want to chase them, so we're going to have to do that. I'm going to go over the whole area with my little air palm sander here with some 220 on it to take some of those 80 grit sand scratches out. We'll go over the whole thing all the way inside and out and blow it off real good. And then the last thing we're going to have to do before we can get primer on here, we're going to get some etching primer on it, on all the bare steel that's exposed. And that new piece needs to come off because where it's clamped together, there's no paint. So I'm going to unbolt it. I'm going to have to prop up the side somehow, and then we can prep those areas and then spray them with some etching primer that will seal them up real good, and then we can bolt it back together. We won't have to worry about rust back inside there. Other than that, this thing's going to get really close to being ready for prime. So let me go over and sand this whole thing, and then blow it off and get cleaned up. Okay, we got everything filled like we wanted and sanded with the palm sander with 220 on it. I'm going to go ahead and sand it again with some wet and dry and an old school sanding block. Try to feather out some of these areas and then get it all sanded all over. Make sure it's scrubbed good and clean. Wash it with some soap and water, pressure wash it well, then park it out to dry before we take it apart to get some etching primer down inside here where it's got bare steel. We got some bare steel on the back too that needs some etching primer. So I'm just going to speed this up, wet sand it real quick, and get this done as quickly as possible. Okay, the etching primer's been sprayed onto the bed. I sanded that down to bare steel back behind there, feathered this out, and got 4 good coats of etching primer on there on both sides. You can see where the red's bleeding through. I think that's lacquer, so it keeps bleeding through everything. But it's good and thick right there, so it'll protect it. That way we can bolt that piece back on and not worry about rust behind it. Okay, I wasn't going to do it, but I went ahead and filled in all the spot welds on all 4 corners, and then touched up a few other spots that I didn't like after I final sanded it. So I did all that work, sanded it again, washed it again, and now for sure I'm done. I took care of some problems that kept popping up from older paint jobs that weren't done very well, so I had to keep bringing paint back and then trying to feather that in. So all in all, I'm stopping right here. It looks pretty good. We got the panel back on here, and as you can see, we're using acorn nuts. So there's a rod that runs all the way through, so we got an acorn nut on both sides. It looks a lot better than just a plain nut. And then we're using acorn nuts all the way down the side, facing out. Then on the inside, see if I can do this, we've got button head bolts all the way down. So that's a much cleaner installation. It's going to look really good. There'll be button head bolts holding the fenders on. And so that's going to look really good when it's all painted. Those all get painted. They're just plated right now. They're not stainless. So I scuffed them up real good to make sure that the paint and primer and everything sticks to them really well. So a lot of dents, scratches, weld holes filled, but we're ready for prime. Okay, that wraps up this video on the bed. We got everything ready. I'm not going to go back and do anything else. I promised myself that 3 times already. But there's a lot of bad paint jobs underneath this, so I had to keep reworking some stuff and doing stuff I wanted to make sure it looks nice. So it's ready to go, ready for polyester primer. The running boards are ready as well. All I have to do is the tailgate, and then we can spray these things with some polyester primer. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already, and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you.